Showtime.
Moving to America.
Then and now.
People.
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 People everywhere. Look around you.
Where did they all come from?
There are people in your school,
There are people in the cities,
driving their cars,
working in buildings,
playing at parks,
people who eat different kinds of food,
wear different kinds of clothes.
and speak different languages.
This is America.
A country of many different people.
But where did all these people come from?
When did they come to America?
And how did they get here?
Let's go back and see how it all started. Imagine this land.
Before there were trains,
Where'd it go?
Before there were cars and streets,
before there were buildings.
and before all the people.
It was a long time ago.
The only people who lived here were the Native Americans.
Native Americans.
We call them Native Americans because they were the first people to live in America. They are also called American Indians. The Native Americans lived in groups called tribes. You can see where some of the tribes lived on this map of the United States. The types of homes and food each tribe used was different because of the land they lived on. The Wampanoag is the tribe the Pilgrims met when they came to America. This tribe lived on the coast, near the water. The Wampanoag lived in round homes called wigwams. The wigwams were covered with bark or mats, made from the tall grasses that grew near the water. Another tribe of American Indians is called the Navajo. The Navajo lived in a part of America that is very dry, like a desert. They lived in special buildings called hogans. The hogans were built from wood, mud, bark, and fur. This type of home was cool in the summer and warm in the winter. Another Native American tribe is the Cherokee. They lived in villages and towns. Their cabins had walls that were woven like baskets and covered with grass and clay. The Yurok is a Native American tribe that lived by the water on the west coast of America. They ate mostly acorns gathered from the oak trees and salmon caught from the rivers nearby. An American Indian tribe called the Cheyenne lived in the middle of the country. The Cheyenne moved from place to place following herds of buffalo. They hunted the buffalo for food and used their skins to make clothing and shelter. The teepees they lived in could be moved very easily. Today, there are still many different Native American groups living in the United States. These Native Americans are performing a traditional dance, just like people from their families that lived so long ago. Do you know what we call people from our families that lived long ago?
No.
We call them our ancestors.
I live in America. Does that mean I have Native American ancestors?
Not necessarily. Most people have ancestors that came to America from other places. Let's find out more. Long ago, the Native American tribes were the only people living in America. Then people began to come from other lands far away. These people were called explorers.
Explorers.
An explorer is a person who travels to search for and discover new places. One of the first explorers to sail to America was Christopher Columbus. He sailed from Spain, a country in Europe. He was looking for a new way to sail to Asia. But he didn't get to Asia because America was in the way. Columbus had hoped to find gold and other riches in Asia. Instead, he found a land that people in Europe did not know about. When Columbus returned to Spain, he told people about the place he had found. Columbus' trip helped people in Europe find out about a place they had not known before, North America. Spain, and then later other countries sent explorers to the new land. The explorers hoped to find gold and to claim land for their country. Spanish explorers claimed Florida, Mexico, part of New Mexico, and California for Spain. English explorers claimed the east coast of America for England. French explorers discovered the Mississippi River. They claimed the land they saw for their country, France. Soon, people from Europe began to come to America to live.
Settlers.
People who move from their old homes to make homes in a new place are called settlers. The groups of houses and buildings the settlers built are called settlements. When the first settlers came to this land, Native Americans had been living here for many years. The land was not divided into states or even countries. The people settled in places called colonies. A colony is a place that belongs to another country. The first settlers came from Spain, just like Columbus. They made their homes in a colony called St. Augustine. The people in St. Augustine had to follow the rules and laws of Spain. Settlers also came from Spain to live in Mexico. Some of those settlers moved north to what is now New Mexico and California. They built many small settlements. One settlement became the city of Santa Fe. It was home to some of the first settlers in America. Settlers also came from England. They sailed for many weeks across an enormous ocean to get to this new land. The ships were crowded and didn't have very much food or fresh water. There were bad storms and many people got sick. They sailed to the east coast of America to a land claimed by England. The first English settlement that lasted for a long time was called Jamestown. Life in Jamestown was not easy. The colonists had to work very hard to find food and to build homes. Another group of colonists from England were called Pilgrims. The Pilgrims left England because in England they were not allowed to pray to God in the way they wanted. They built a settlement called Plymouth in a place where Native Americans once had a village. There were no houses or stores to buy the things they needed. They became friends with Wampanoag Indians, who taught them how to plant corn, hunt, and fish. People from a country called the Netherlands also sailed across the ocean. They settled a colony called New Amsterdam, named after a city in their old country. Later, the English took over New Amsterdam and changed the name to New York.
Did all the settlers come to America because of their religion?
No. Most settlers wanted to come to America because there was plenty of land for them to have their own farms and homes. In America, people could have a better life than they did in their old land. But not everyone came to America because they wanted to. Did you know that some people were forced to come to America? It's true.
Slaves from Africa.
Many people were taken from their homes in Africa by force. They were brought to America as slaves and sold to other people. A slave is a person who is owned by another person. Slaves were sold to people in America. The slaves had no rights. They had to do what their owners told them. Most slaves were made to work on large farms called plantations. They were forced to work in hot fields all day long with no pay. Sometimes someone in the slave's family was sold to another plantation owner, and then the family was separated. Later, a law was made to put an end to slavery, and the African American slaves were freed.
So, we all have ancestors that were either American Indians, settlers, or slaves?
Well, some of us. But there is more to this story. Let's see what happened next. This map shows where most of the first settlers lived. As more people came to America, the land in these areas became very crowded. For some people, it was too crowded. So these people began to move to areas of land that had not been settled yet. These people were called pioneers.
Pioneers.
A pioneer is a person who leads the way into a land that people don't know very much about. The pioneers packed all of their belongings into covered wagons pulled by oxen and started west. Usually, several families would travel together to help each other along the way. The group of wagons was called a wagon train. The pioneers faced many difficulties. They traveled in all sorts of weather: wind, rain, and snow. And sometimes their wagons would break. The pioneers would often get sick or hurt, and there was no one there to help them. They had to cross rivers, plains, and mountains. There were no roads, so they often followed rivers. When the pioneers came to a place they wanted to live, they stopped. They built new homes and started farms, ranches, and towns. After the towns were started, settlers followed the trails made by the pioneers. Once the settlers reached the new towns, they built homes. And some started businesses to sell the things that other settlers needed. They built schools and churches for the people of the community to use. Some of the towns grew larger, and some turned into cities. Many did not. All these communities needed things like food, lumber to build buildings, coal to burn for warmth in the winter, animals to raise for food, and oil to light their lamps. But moving all these things across the country was difficult. It was much easier and faster to carry things on trains. A very important time was when the first railroad tracks were built to cross the entire country. One group started building tracks here in Omaha, Nebraska. Another group of people started building the tracks here in Sacramento, California. Many of the workers in this group came from China to help build the railroad. They worked hard, and finally the tracks came together. They placed a golden spike at the point where the two tracks met, here at Promontory Point, Utah. Now the trains could travel all the way from one side of the country to the other side, bringing supplies to all the towns in between. The trains brought people, too. It was much easier and faster to travel on a train than in a covered wagon. After the railroad was finished, many Chinese workers stayed in America and sent for their families to live here too.
Were these people called pioneers too?
No. People that come from a different country to make a new country their home are called immigrants. And soon people were coming to America from all over the world.
Early immigrants.
These immigrants traveled across the oceans on ships. If the ships came from this direction, they had to land at a place called Angel Island in San Francisco Bay. If the ships came from this direction, the people had to stop at an island called Ellis Island in New York. At these islands, the people had to answer questions about why they wanted to come to America. Some of the people said they wanted a chance for a better job or to own their own land. Some came to get away from wars. Others came so they could be free to have their own religion. After the questions, a doctor looked at the immigrants to be sure they were healthy. If the immigrants were healthy and hadn't hurt people in their home country, they were allowed to come into America to live.
So, our ancestors could have come from many different places.
That's right. And some ancestors moved here hundreds of years ago. Others have been here only a short time. And some immigrants are just coming to America now.
Immigrants today.
They come to work, go to school, and make better lives for their families. The immigrants bring pieces of their old home to our country. They bring new languages. They bring different types of clothing. They bring interesting music. And don't forget, immigrants bring flavorful food and different ways of cooking.
Egg rolls are my favorite.
New people in America often continue to do things like they did in their old homes while they learn about American life. Do you recognize this statue?
Yes, it's the Statue of Liberty.
That's right. When later immigrants arrived on ships in New York, the Statue of Liberty was the first thing they saw. The statue holds up a light to welcome new people to our land.
Ever since the Native Americans lived on this land, people all over the world have come to America to make new lives for themselves.
The early settlers, like the Pilgrims,
The slaves who were made to come,
the pioneers who moved across the country,
the millions of later immigrants,
and all the immigrants that still come to America today.
Ah, so that's where all these people have come from.
Discover more about the people of the United States. Call 1-800-483-3383 for 100% educational videos, or visit our website at schoolvideos.com.